This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
Lurch, the music has stopped.
No, but I can't.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz. Gil is away this week, which sucks for him because we have a very special guest. Well, all of our guests are very special to us, but SEAN Cassidy, son of Lurch? Yeah, special. Not only did Ted Cassidy play Lurch, a role that made him, but also pigeonholed him too, he played Harvey Logan, a guy who challenges Butch Cassidy for control of the Hole-in-the-Wall gang in the opening minutes of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. One of my favorite movies ever. 5x2 favorite. As we'll discuss with SEAN, his dad speaks one of the 50 greatest movie lines of all time. I call it top 10 myself. We'll get there. And we'll get to all of Ted's other work, other acting roles, his voiceover work, which is where he was happiest, it turns out, to his writing. You didn't know Ted Cassidy wrote screenplays too? Well, he did. There's a lot more to Ted Cassidy than you realize. But first, a little nudging. If you enjoy what we do here, don't be shy about it. Hit the like button in whatever form it takes, if there's a like button to hit. It really does make a difference in how the platforms treat us content creators. Also helpful, subscribe. That way you can stay abreast of everything else we're working on. And we're working on a ton of new things, including Are You Afraid? A streaming hour-long horror black comedy about
Flesh-eating ghouls.
For a long time, we humans have been deeply afraid of vampires and zombies.
Sin for paramedics.
Fair enough, vampires and zombies are scary. But neither vampires nor zombies
Are real.
Flesh-eating ghouls, on the other hand, are real. They've been living in our shadow for thousands of years, hunting us, feasting on us, treating us
Like food.
But some ghouls are tired of living in the shadow of their food. Those ghouls have decided it's time to leave the shadow.
And put us in our place where we belong.
On the Menu.
It's an eat or be eaten world.
Flavored by fear, filled with the monster we should have been afraid of all along.
Flesh-eating ghoul.
Are you afraid?
Better be.
Coming soon.
I first met SEAN Cassidy at HorrorCon LA last year, where he appeared as Son of Lurch. Now, I'm not starstruck. I've had the pleasure of meeting and working with some of the biggest names in this business. Working with people whose work you've admired is a very cool experience, especially when you have to rely on each other to pull off your respective jobs. Their success hinges on your success. It makes for a different kind of relationship. Still, jaded as I've become, there are still people who, for whatever reason, I'm less jaded about. As I've said on this podcast, my biggest casting thrill back in the Crypt days was Buck Henry, because he was also a great screenwriter. He wrote the screenplays for The Graduate, Heaven Can Wait, What's Up, Doc, To Die For, and Catch-22.
She's magnificent, every ounce, 'cause it's what's inside that counts.
As for Ted Cassidy, I grew up in the late 1960s and early 70s. I remember watching the Addams Family and the Munsters when they appeared on our clunky old black and white TV for the very first time. I feel a strange connectedness to those shows to this day. That's why when we were making Tales from the Crypt, it was such a thrill when we got to hire Yvonne DiCarlo, Lily Munster for one episode.
It's like he saw it coming. He did. He had cancer.
And John Aston Gomez Adams for another.
Oh, no!
If Ted Cassidy had still been alive when we were making Crypt, let me assure you, we absolutely would have hired him to do an episode. And I feel pretty certain we would have cast him against type, just like we did with Malcolm McDowell, who we cast as the reluctant vampire. Alas, life isn't nearly as fair as we'd like it to be. We never got to work with Ted. On the plus side, wait till you meet Sean, son of Lurch. Sean's a lovely person in his own right, as you'll see. And he tells his dad's story with the son's inside baseball knowledge and lots of love. At what point in your life did you pick up your dad's mantle?
Oh, geez. Well, it's a good question because in what way? I mean, I was always very tall. Dad was very tall. In some ways, that was it. Although I never thought of myself as tall because Dad was 6'9", I topped out at 6'7". I'm 6'6" now, so I never thought of myself as tall, but other people did, I suppose. It was in Brentwood and the Palisades, and every other person is an actor, and Paul Revere Junior High School and Palisades High. I definitely was in drama and all of that, and dipped my toe into some TV stuff. But you know what? I watched my dad, who was successful in his career. But you know how Hollywood is. Even the successful ones, there were times he was sitting by the phone sweating, like just hoping it would ring. And I remember watching that and thinking, I don't know, maybe something a little more predictable. I'm an attorney. That's my day job. And so I did that, but yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's a lot of fun stuff.
You appreciated early on that, yes, as hard as it is to get onto this mountain, that's not the hardest thing. The hardest thing is staying on the mountain.
Staying relevant.
That's
Dad was
that's
always
what can drive you crazy.
Absolutely. And Dad had the thing, which was being tall, right? In Hollywood, that meant, but that also limited the roles you could get unless you were Clint Walker or some of these guys who somehow could rise above that. So he'd see a lot of the same guys at interviews. And, you know, that was it. He called a lot of the roles that he went to interview for, to audition for, seize them roles. So
Seize
them roles. So he would be the leader of some gang, or and he would seize them.
How old were you when your dad died?
21.
Okay, so you were old enough to observe, not just observe these things, but only being 21, the 21-year-old male is not the cleverest creature on the planet, but still,
you knew me well. Yes.
I knew me. I knew me.
Right,
that's all I need to know. But still, you absorbed enough to realize that this is a crazy way to spend your life.
I was 6 years old when the whole thing started. That I really didn't know anything different. So we were in Dallas. Dad was a DJ. He was one of the first interviewers of witnesses to the JFK assassination. So that was kind of a big thing for him at WFAA in Dallas. And then he got the Lurch job, and that's a story we should talk about, how he got the job. Dad hit the ground running. He came out for the job. So he was part of Hollywood when he got here. And, all the people he met, the friends he made, were all in the industry. And they were nuts. They were cuckoo people.
Do you recall from your, at that point, you said 6-year-old perspective, you went from, you had apparently a family house in Dallas that was very important, a family house, an important place. So you left this secure place to come to, a place that was a lot more expensive to begin with.
Yeah, that's true. But I wasn't really aware of that. We moved into an apartment in Santa Monica.
Right. You moved from a house because that's what your dad could afford to an apartment because that's what your dad could afford.
And that was the base to look for about a year for a house. So we had to search for one. He made a good buy in Rustic Canyon. What a neighborhood that was in Pacific Palisades. Back then it was, I call it upper middle class. I mean, it wasn't the crazy rich that it is now. And sort of an artist enclave. It was a lot of fun. So I was saying earlier that, I was young enough so that the associate's dad, the friend's dad made, were crazy, and I wasn't used to anything else. These were creative people back in the 60s. Being of a certain sexual preference was controversial, but I didn't think so. I met all these people of all different kinds. They were all brilliant and funny and creative and so much fun to be around. So that was a lot of fun for me.
I would imagine that growing up as you did in LA in the 70s was in and of itself an amazing story all by itself.
So many reasons. I mean, I'm a
Holy
big
cow.
basketball fan and UCLA and the Lakers. That was a great time.
Oh
Oh,
my.
the music, the beach, it was paradise. And dad being employed, that was fun.
My question was, at what point did you pick up your dad's mantle and
Yeah,
suddenly take on this idea of the son of Lurch?
right. Well, yeah, so several years ago, I was reading about these conventions and just kind of thinking, well, gee, Lurch is a real popular character. What about the son of? I mean, lucky for me, I look a lot like him. I'm tall. There's really, to be honest, no one else from the show who could do that. John Aston's still alive, but he's 93, I think, and he's not willing to do any of that. And most of the cast members are gone, and even the children don't look like I'm the only one. So already talking to MGM about how we can coordinate some promotion for this year's 60th anniversary. And so should be very exciting. This is part of that, Alan. Thank you very much.
It is, as someone who is also experiencing the benefits of a resurgence, my show Tales from the Crypt, when God, for years and years, it was an anvil around my neck.
Ah,
It was like, well, what have you done lately of any
yeah,
particular
yeah.
value?
The
And
more
then
it ages, the more you have to answer that. Yeah.
but then it suddenly hits a sweet spot. And I just started going to horror conventions,
Uh-huh.
which is where we met
Right, right,
at HorrorCon LA.
right.
What was a revelation to me when I went to my first horror convention was, in fact, a lot of the cosplay. So many people
Yeah.
dress up. What's curious is that they dress up as Freddy Krueger, as Leatherface, as Jason. No one ever dresses up as any of the victims.
As what?
As any of the victims.
Right, right.
They dress up as the monster. And
Of
what
course.
occurred to me is that the horror fans embrace horror, not just because it's fun, but because, well, hey, in a horror movie, the monster is he's having all the fun and they're the empowered one. And that's what horror fans embrace about horror. It's the empowerment.
Yeah, and what I think that also dovetails into that, Alan, is so frequently the monster is the underdog,
Yes.
is the one I sympathize with. My
Yeah.
first favorite movie star was Godzilla. And from that first movie, I was pulling for him in every
Yeah.
scene. And
Yeah.
I think that continues. Everybody pulls for Lurch. It's,
Is it really so bad to want to be the monster?
That's a good question. I suppose it depends on your
On who the
intentions
monster
and,
is, but not all monsters are monstrous. Some
Right.
monsters actually
Exactly.
are. They're not all monsters are the
Yes.
villain. Some monsters are just different.
Well, you go back to the original Frankenstein, yeah. And certainly Lurch was like that. Everybody loved him who knew him.
It is, and that is the particular nature of, really, the monster is not necessarily monstrous.
Yes, yes.
And one of the things, why does a character like Lurch endure? But because despite, hey, I'm just a storyteller. As I look at him, I think,
yeah.
wow, he's monstrous, and yet you feel his soul.
You do. You're right. He's a pensive and self-reflective character, Lurch, and such a nice guy. One of the things I love about Lurch, and especially today with this culture that more and more focuses on and sympathizes with people who are different. And certainly 1964, 1965, Lurch was as different as you got. And but he didn't feel less. He just told you what he thought. I mean, I think he's still kind of a poster child for that type of type of thing we think about today.
Lurch seemed comfortable inside his own skin.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yeah.
And wow, what an accomplishment.
Now, what's interesting though, Alan, now that you say that, it makes me think Dad wasn't necessarily comfortable in his own skin, but Lurch was.
Mm.
And there's a big difference there. Dad, was 6'9". He grew up in Philippi, West Virginia, this little town, the 30s and 40s. He was a monster, just being himself.
Mm.
And he always felt that all the time. And I know when I was young, he would talk to me about it because he figured I would feel the same. And he would try to tell me, I did not. My father was taller than me. I was in Los Angeles. I played basketball. I had plenty of friends who were tall. So it was just interesting that almost a curse just haunted him all the time. And I never felt it.
He had acromegaly.
He did not. I'm so glad you asked that. One of the reasons I'm doing this, actually, Alan, is to disavow that and correct some misinformation. He did not.
He did not have it. Cool.
For some reason, people assume it because he was tall, and I think that I've been trying to figure out for a while. I think there's some medical article from Australia that first claimed it. That's not the case.
Huh.
He had a congenital heart tumor, and they went in to take it out, and there were complications from surgery. That's all it was. I'll tell you, I went in to get a new doctor a few years ago, and it was the first time he saw me. He's sitting there with his clipboard. He's talking, and he says, "Oh, and you have acromegaly." I went, "What?" He said, "Well, you're 6'7", or what was at the time." And I said, "No, I do not." Some people just assume it. It's so strange.
It's funny how prevalent that is all over when you go looking at research on your dad.
It's all over the place.
It's associated with him.
Yes, you might see that I'm slowly trying to crawl in there.
Yeah. Well, and that because we're doing a public service for sure.
Yeah. So no, he didn't. And one of the reasons is, I don't know why I think this, there's some sort of negative connotation to that. It's a horrible disease. Whoever suffers from it, I feel sorry. It's bad, but it's also too bad that there's kind of this negative thing about it, and that's another reason I don't want that associated with Dad. But the fact is, he didn't have it. I mean, all that telltale stuff, the forehead and all that, he didn't have any of that. He was an athlete.
Yeah.
He carried himself very well, and yeah.
Your dad was just unusually tall.
Right.
And that was burden enough.
Right. And in a small town in West Virginia, that was Frankenstein.
So he eventually gets out of the small town. He ends up in Florida at a place called Stetson University.
Yes. And he was on the basketball team there. When he was a senior, they ended up there.
What position did your dad play? At 6'9" in the NBA, he's a power forward.
He's a power forward.
Karl Malone is 6'9".
Right. He was a 5 then.
Okay.
Even I was a 5. I was only 6'7". Anyway, so in 1954, they ended their season ranked 4th in the nation. I think was Division III. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Did he enjoy playing basketball, or was that? Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, he loved it, and we loved it together. Some of the best times I spent with my dad were at the night on the blacktop at high school, just the two of us. Just those great moments. That was really fun. Yeah, he enjoyed a lot. He he did that light beer commercial with Wilt Chamberlain in the 70s.
When you're my size, there's one thing you don't have to worry about, and that's getting filled up. So a lot of people are really surprised when they find out that I drink light beer from Miller. It has 1/3 less calories than their regular beer, and it's less filling. But that's not why I drink it. I drink light because I love that taste. Hey, Mac, another light. Hey, man, what's going on? Fine, Shorty.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
They actually became friends. I only found this out a few years ago because Wilt never came to our house, but Dad apparently went over to his house, or they hung out at restaurants or something a lot. Dad wrote a few scripts And
Yes, and yes, I
script,
definitely want to get to the
the writing.
yeah, the writing.
So,
It's multifaceted, multi-talented
oh,
man, your
really,
dad.
really, oh my goodness, very, very talented man in a lot of ways that is not out there. Anyway, he wrote these scripts, and the one down talking about basketball again. I remember one day sitting at the Brown Derby. Remember, kind of the Santa Monica, West LA,
Yeah,
Hollywood, wherever
sure,
that was.
sure. Oh my God, the
Uh,
Brown Derby. Holy cow.
yeah, the Brown Derby. I remember sitting with Dad and Bill Russell as they discussed a film that Dad had written for two tall guys in the West, white and black. Uh, I still love that script. Anyway, so another basketball story there.
He meets your mom at college
Right.
at Stetson.
Stetson,
Your mom Helen, she was there. What did it say here? She was studying creative arts and psychology.
Yes, she is a psychologist.
She is a psychologist
Yes,
as we speak.
that's right. On Monday,
Excellent.
I fly up to Seattle to visit my mother and my sister, so I'll be seeing her. Right, she plays golf. I mean, she's amazing. She is an amazing. She also is multi-talented. She plays multiple instruments, wrote music for the Reno Philharmonic or whatever they're called. She was a model early in life. She and Ted Turner share an Emmy for some television they produced together. I mean, I can't even think, but both of my parents were impressive and set the bar high.
Your dad graduates college and he segues into radio broadcasting, does a little bit of work in Florida, ends up in
Right.
Dallas.
Right.
And as you said, while he was in Dallas, he was both a DJ and a sports director in Dallas, but
Right.
he was in the middle of all the excitement on the day that JFK was assassinated. He was apparently among the first to interview W.E. Newman Jr. and Gail Newman, two of the
Right.
those are two people on the grassy knoll, and your dad interviewed them.
I don't remember Dad or Mom even talking about it. I knew something was up, but my biggest indication was, I don't know, was it Saturday morning cartoons were preempted by the funeral. I remember not liking that, but I didn't know the significance really.
How old were you when JFK was assassinated?
I guess I was 6.
So
So
we are roughly the same age. I was born in 1959.
57.
57. Oh, okay, yeah, because
Yeah.
I do have memories of JFK's assassination, of the
Oh,
TV being turned toward away from the usual and on to very somber stuff.
yes, yes. Yeah, it was that was an interesting time. So I didn't really know about it. And I wondered why they didn't talk about it. Actually, I didn't know he was involved at all until one day in Rustic Canyon, I found a newspaper the day following the assassination of the Morning Dallas News that was mint condition. I thought, why do we have this? And then I found out.
And so suddenly this is a piece of history, and your
Yeah.
father was a piece
And he
of
made
history, and he never said anything.
he never said anything. And even when I asked him about it, he made very little of it. I don't know why. Can't ask him now.
Damn.
Yeah.
At what point did the acting bug suddenly grab a hold of him while he was in Dallas that suddenly he needed to take his shot?
Well, I don't know if it ever did. The show that he did, he was a DJ playing a lot of jazz discs. But at the same time, he had some characters. He liked to do voices, and he had a couple of puppets that would, as I forget their names now, but they used to eat his records. So these were little animals around around his office that would get in his way and trouble him, and they had arguments, and he had this cute little skit going. And I think he did some local stuff for the channel. I don't know what it was, but they contacted him. He wasn't reaching out. So maybe now I'll tell you the story.
Go for it.
His sister Carol, my Aunt Carol, was a stewardess for TWA. And once she was on a stayover in Hawaii. And I don't know who the casting director was for the Addams Family, but somehow they met on the beach and they were talking and, oh, I'm just starting this show. Oh, my brother is an actor and he's tall. And my understanding is, I haven't been able to verify this anywhere, but I remember hearing it, that Abe Vigoda was actually cast as Lurch, that it was done. And so Dad was kind of coming in afterwards. And when they did his audition, it was explained to him what the character was. Kind of the original Charles Addams Lurch was right bent over, hence the word lurch, and had no lines, no grunts, no nothing. He was a lamppost. And my dad would not have that. He would do the best he could for this character. So they pulled the rope. He comes in and he ad libs, "You rang." And the place just fell apart. And from that moment on, he was hired. They gave him lines, they gave him storylines. He became what he became. Yeah, and I just think that's great. He really rose to the occasion there.
There is a story that originally, when the show was built around Lurch the Butler, and they originally offered that role to John Astin.
John Astin, right.
And they took him to lunch and they explained it to him, and he was he didn't get it. And he was on the verge a couple of days later of just passing on the whole project when David Levy called him and said, "Come to luncheon." They went to an old Hollywood haunt, and he listened to John vent, and finally he said, "Okay, what if you played," and I don't think the character was called Gomez at that point.
They had no names in the original comics.
Right. And so suddenly they agreed that John Astin would play the father figure who became Gomez, and they changed the whole focus of the show away from the butler as the entry point to, I guess, the family as the entry point.
Now, I'll tell you, Alan, it's the first I've ever heard that. I never heard that it was originally Lurch-centric. Where did you hear that? I'm curious.
I've read that a couple of places.
Now, I know he auditioned as Lurch, or they wanted him as Lurch. That I know, but I didn't know that the show was around Lurch, and they came back to that later. I think the best episodes are the Lurch-centric ones. Lurch Learns to Dance is the #1 viewed episode.
Come on, try it. Listen up a little. Let yourself go. Oh boy, I'm lucky. I'll say I'm lucky. This is my lucky day. You got it, Lurch.
I have great memories of that because only my sister and I remember this. My mom was getting her psychology degree, and those days, actually, she wasn't home a lot. And so Dad was home, and just Cameron and I, my sister, were there, and Dad was rehearsing for that. And so we remember being with him in the bedroom, and he's in front of a mirror trying out all this stuff to see what might look funny and ask us, "Is this funny?" Of course, everything he did was funny. We were on the floor the whole time, but it was just fascinating. He's trying this and different things. And then when they get to actually doing it, when they rolled tape and he first comes in, I don't know if you remember, he kind of comes in like this. Well, the first time he did that too, but he came in as a graceful ballet dancer. And they had to cut, "Ted, that's great, but that's not what we're going for here." He could not help himself. He so wanted to be, regarded a serious actor and not the lamppost, and then he did this stuff, which today is just a great piece of physical comedy.
One of the last episodes was a romantic episode for the
Yes.
Lurch character.
Right.
The penultimate episode.
Yeah, that's right. It was penultimate. Very good.
Hey.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't get to use the word penultimate all.
No, you don't. You don't. So good use.
Yeah.
I like that. One of the real fun ones for me was Mother Lurch Visits. Corby.
Yeah.
Oh,
is it Ellen? Didn't Margaret Hamilton also play a character?
Yes, she wasn't Lurch's mother, but she wasn't. And I remember meeting her. I guess that's an aside too. I remember being scared to death. Here's the Wicked Witch of the West, and
she played Morticia's mom.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
think, yeah. I think that,
Yeah.
yeah, and
But I recognized her as the Wicked Witch, and I
surely.
was kind of scared because I tell you, to this day, she's the greatest evil character in all of cinema, in my mind. And I got to meet her, and of course, she was just a lovely, wonderful woman, and that was great to see. So in the Mother Lurch comes to visit, Ellen Corby was the mother, and just by coincidence, Dad's mother, my grandmother Emily from Philippi, West Virginia, was out to visit. So she was on set. And so I have a picture of Dad and Ellen and Emily. It was just such a great shot.
As the Addams family was running really at the same time, the Munsters.
Right.
How strange to have two
How
shows.
strange was that? Yeah, I'd heard forever that it was a total coincidence. The more I've read, not really. They kind of knew it was out there. And it was like uh, Datsun, Toyota. I mean, it was like, which one do you pick? I made sure all my friends pled their allegiance to the Addams
Oh
family.
yeah. What a and there was competition at the end.
Absolutely, there was.
At the
Yeah,
end of the first year's TV season, the Munsters ranked at number 18 with a rating of 24.7, and the Addams family came in at 23 with a 23.9 rating.
yeah,
Uh, uh,
yeah.
but
I always thought that was unfortunate, but
it's funny because as competitive as the two shows were, at the end of each show's second season, they both got canceled.
yeah,
They both got canceled more or less at the same time. And yet neither has left the public's imagination.
right, right. They carry on, and especially the Addams family. There's so many things about it which remain relevant today. And one thing great about the show, and John Aston talks about this, is they were one of the first shows that showed, um, a romantic love of a married couple.
Yes.
And I mean, they
Yes.
were role models in terms of a married couple. And
You sense that there was sexual dynamism between them.
And that was true on set too, because even when I was there, I was maybe there a dozen times over my life, but a few times, they would have the Tish, you spoke French, and you'd start kissing her arm, and he wouldn't stop there. And they had so much fun. I'm sure there was half the stuff was left on the cutting room floor because they couldn't use it, but it was just fun.
Of necessity. I mean, yeah, standards and practices.
Right, right. There's a lot of laughter and fun on that set. They all got along really well.
It certainly seemed like it was a set where everyone was enjoying the process and the product.
Yeah, it was very fun. And for my sister and me, we had our own special take on this. The dressing rooms were kind of interesting. Dad's dressing room was a small one, kind of behind the set. John's dressing room, you had to go out of the sound studio, across an alley, up some stairs to like a little apartment. And as I recall, Morticia's was in set. It was large and it had a heart-shaped bed. I remember that. How can
What
that
kind of
be?
deal
I've
did
never even
Carol?
heard of that.
What kind of deal did Carolyn Jones make? Holy
Oh,
cow!
I don't know. Well, she was the star. She was the big star. She was the big name when it came out.
Wasn't she was married to Aaron Spelling at the time, wasn't she?
I think that's right. Yeah.
Oh,
So
there you
there you go. A
go.
little power there.
There
So
you go.
my sister and I sometimes would hang out in Dad's dressing room while they were filming. You'd think we'd be out there wanting to watch. No, because you know how they work then. They got the red light goes on, meaning don't breathe, don't do anything. We're filming. When that red light was on, we knew the donut cart was unguarded. So we would wait in Dad's dressing room. We would see that red light and we'd creep out and get a bunch of donuts. I mean, what's better than that for a little kid?
A craft services table, man. That is the candy store in which you want to be the kid.
Yeah, yeah, that was really fun.
Frank Capra was such a fan of the Addams family that he offered to come out of retirement and direct episodes, apparently.
I did not know that.
But apparently he couldn't reach a financial agreement with the showrunners. Another interesting thing, let's see, Filmways did plan to shoot a season 3 in color, but ABC canceled the show before they had a chance.
And the real unfortunate thing I think of about the timing of the cancellation, my understanding it was done in the summer when there was nobody there, when filming wasn't happening. And so a lot of the props for the show were taken by crew members of other shows. They heard about it. They came onto the set and they took everything. And the reason it's too bad is that, Dad played Thing, right? He was Thing. And we would have loved to have a Thing box. I think there were 3 of them. And they were all gone. That was too bad. And another thing to observe about that time that led to that was Ken Weatherwax played Pugsley, and he and I would pal around the lot a bit. And next door was Beverly Hillbillies. Across the alley was Mr. Ed. And we would go and walk into that soundstage. It wasn't locked. There was no security. There's nobody inside. All the props are just lying around. Are you kidding me? The flip side of that is we didn't mess with anything. That was the era. We didn't mess with anything. There was no security. It all worked fine. But it's just such a great memory.
I'm sure. And you're walking through TV history.
TV history, yeah. And it's funny, I remember seeing the horse, Mr. Ed, and it's going, being as starstruck by the horse as by any person I saw that a lot.
That one didn't talk, I bet. After the Addams Family, well, actually, your dad wasn't entirely done with playing Lurch. He would play Lurch a few more times. He played Lurch in an episode of Batman.
Batman and Robin would scale a building. There was a thing then about somebody coming out a window and talking to them. And it was a thing then to be a guest star. People wanted that.
Right. Cool. Yes, I remember that now.
There were a lot of different people. So it was really fun, Dad.
Oh, it's you, Batman. Gave me quite a start.
Yes, citizen, you may return to your harpsichord. We're on official business.
And of course, there was the animated Addams Family series in 1973. Your dad, of course,
voiced that. Sure,
voiced that. And after that, there was still acting work. Well,
there was the movie, the 1977 movie Halloween with the Addams Family.
Right. So yeah,
not a great piece of film work there, but still,
it was a paycheck.
It was.
Sometimes it's just a paycheck,
And from what I've said, you probably surmise Dad was not thrilled about reprising the role, but yeah, it was a paycheck.
It is the curse. It is the role that made him, in essence. It is the role for which he is most remembered. And it's the role, I'm sure, by the end, he least wanted to play.
Absolutely. He wanted to be a serious actor. And of course, he recognized Lurch was his entry into Hollywood. And that he always wanted to do something else. I think there's a video of him saying he wasn't proud of anything he ever did in Hollywood. Because they were seized them roles, and that's not what he wanted. But I truly believe, and one of the reasons I'm doing this, actually, my sister and I talked a little bit, because she wondered why I would do kind of the son of Lurch. You remember Dad didn't even like Lurch. I know, but I think if he were alive today, he would see what a part of Americana Lurch has become, what a great job he did with that role. The subtle comedy he did with that role is just unmatched. And I think he would feel differently about it now. So
it does take time sometimes for the work to and perspective to be seen within the perspective of the culture in which it was created.
Right.
And we are all small pieces of a mosaic, a much larger mosaic, and sometimes we don't realize our place in the mosaic.
How poetic, Alan. That's so true.
Well, thank you. I should write that down.
I should write that down.
Your dad appeared in a lot of TV shows in addition to Batman and Star Trek, 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Man from U.N.C.L.E., Beverly Hillbillies, Mr. Terrific. That was a good
Oh,
show.
yeah. I've got
Daniel Boone, I Dream of Jeannie, Mannix, Bonanza, Ironside, Banachek.
oh, you got them all. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Later, Bionic Woman, The $6 Million Man. I mean, your dad,
Lots of stuff. Yeah.
he was still, his brand had value, is how we would put it today.
Right.
He was a recognizable brand.
Right. And even beyond that, just as a person, he was just, Lurch was obviously bigger than life, but so was Ted Cassidy. He was just a big man with a big personality. He entertained by his very nature. And so that served him well through all of that. One thing I don't read about much, but I remember is Dad must have been in the mid to later 60s. Dad was on the Mike Douglas show and sang, as Ted Cassidy sang, "The Wind Calls," they call the wind Mariah. You know that song?
Sure,
And
sure,
he
sure. From
did
Paint
that.
Your Wagon. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember him practicing it in the den and then on the show, and he probably liked that better than anything else he did because it was him and a real talent, rather than the lamppost sees them stuff. He saw himself as. I really think it was so much better than that. And it's too bad he and I can't have that conversation now, but
Was he at least in any way satisfied with his work as Harvey Logan and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
well, it was another seize them role. But I'm glad you brought that up. That was maybe the happiest he was ever in his career. There's one shot especially of Redford and Newman and George Roy Hill, and the four of them are talking, and it looks like Hill's just finished a joke, and all three of them, the other three, are just the best smile on my dad's face I've ever seen. He was in his element. He was with the big boys. It was a real big picture, and he
holding his own. Oh my God, that is an incredible early scene in the movie.
Sundance, when we're done, if he's dead, you're welcome to stay.
Listen, I don't mean to be a sore loser, but when it's done, if I'm dead, kill him. Love to. No, not yet. Not until me and Harvey get the rules straightened out.
Rules? In a knife fight? No rules.
Well, if there ain't gonna be any rules, let's get the fight started. Someone count 1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go.
I was really rooting for you, Butch.
Well, thank you, Flatnose. That's what sustained me in my time of trouble.
All right, here's my favorite take on that. I was young and Dad was away and he sent me a letter, and I haven't seen it in years. I hope I still have it, but he sent me a letter to say that this scene was going to happen and what he and Paul talked about it. And they decided they're both professionals. They want to make this look as real as possible. So the plan, emphasize the word plan, was they did put a pillow around Dad's thigh under the jeans. The plan was Paul would hit the pillow. Of course, his foot would ride up, but at least it would take some of the brunt. Well, Paul missed and hit him dead on. And he told me that look on his face was real.
It is the shot as he is on as
he's
Harvey Logan is on the
ground,
and he suddenly realizes as Sundance is going 1, 2, 3, go, and Harvey Logan knows what's coming, and it is not going to be fun. Yeah, there is a look that is, man, you cannot act that look. That is, I've hired a lot of actors. I've never ever hired an actor to act. It's the last thing I want an actor to do. All the acting the camera will see, we'll have to cut it out and it'll end up on the floor.
You want them to be.
And it is, but that's why he is so good in that small role. He's still being Harvey. And in that moment, yes, even his last moment, that grunt is fantastic. However they
Yeah.
got that grunt is fantastic. And the look on his face, even in repose afterwards when he's on the ground,
Right.
it still carries over.
Yeah, it does. He loved that. I'll send you a couple of pictures from that shoot.
And he got to speak one of the great lines: "Rules in a knife fight?
Right.
No rules."
Yeah, I
Thunk.
believe that's on AFI's list of the 100 greatest movie quotes.
Yeah, yeah, he got to say it before he got kicked in the nuts. But okay,
Right,
you
right.
can't
Well,
have
whatever the
everything.
price is, right? That's it.
Hey, no one said greatness was easy.
Yeah.
Your dad and your mom also appeared in a game show called It Takes Two.
Yes, with Vin Scully.
Vin Scully was the
Yes.
host. It ran
And-
from 1969 to 1979, 153 episodes. Celebrity couples, at least one of the two is a celebrity, competing for prizes on behalf of, I guess, regular people in the audience. Okay.
Right.
Answering questions like, how many chicken legs can a college football team eat during the show?
I don't remember any of the questions.
Apparently that was the kind of question. And looking at the over the course of 153 episodes, the celebrities, I'm just going to throw a couple of names just because, like Shelley Berman, James Darren, Buddy Greco, Marty Ingalls, Marlo Thomas, Richard Long, Jim Backus, Greg Morris, Maury Amsterdam, Dean Jones, Dan Rowan, John Aston, Milton Berle, Dom DeLuise, Sebastian Cabot, Robert Clary, Dionne Warwick, Dorothy Lamour, Rod Serling, Betty White, Mel Torme, Groucho Marx. Your dad and mom made it through 5 episodes.
Wow.
The best was Shelley Berman and bit part actor Mickey Manners and comedian Stanley Myron Handelman, who made it through 11 episodes.
Wow. Well, I don't remember that other than a picture I have of that. And what I love about the picture is it shows Vin with, I don't know, the woman attendant, whatever. And you see 2 of the couples back here, Milton Berle and Dad and Mom's score is higher.
Yeah.
I love
well,
it.
it must have been because they won at least they
won
at least 4 shows.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So bravo. They did very, very well. And then your dad writing. Suddenly, was he writing all along? Did he turn to writing? Because suddenly in 1973, he's the co-writer of the Harrod Experiment.
Right. Well, he and Noel Marshall, who was the executive producer of The Exorcist, were very good buddies. Noel's wife at the time was Tippi Hedren.
Sure.
So I remember going over to their house a lot, and you might know that today Tippi Hedren runs Shambhala, which is a refuge for big cats, lions, tigers, etc. in Acton, California. So when I would go there to visit, they had big cats. I think it was in Sherman Oaks. I'm sure it was not in compliance with municipal
zoning. Yeah.
I have another one I can send you, Alan. There's a picture of me with my arm around a lion in their backyard pool. Like, what were my parents thinking? I don't know, but
you're still here, so
yeah. So anyway, he and Noel buddied up, and I don't know if you know the movie Roar that Tippi and Melanie Griffith and Noel did, and Dad and Noel wrote that together. I don't know if he got
the credit, I think, is additional material by something in that territory.
It was a lot more than that. I remember they were kind of arguing about that, but whatever. So there was that. The Harrod Experiment kind of came from that. Then what was in Don Johnson was in that? And
yes,
Johnson,
Don. Yeah.
Right, Don Johnson and Melanie were together at that.
Yeah, and Melanie Griffith.
That was the connection.
Your dad also wrote some additional dialogue on the film Catch the Black Sunshine.
Yes.
In 1974.
He was a wordsmith. He was a very intelligent guy. He was captain of his debate team at Stetson. And he instilled that in me. I enjoy writing. And one of the fun stories I remember from my childhood is that I would ask Dad, this word, what does this mean? Well, look it up. And so it got to the point where we would spend some evenings sitting on the couch reading the dictionary. we had this thing, we close our eyes, go like this, and then read every word on the page and discuss it. And it was just so fun. And I really got a love of language and writing and wordsmithing from him. So he enjoyed that all along. And it was kind of another thing he loved in his career was voiceover. And of course, he had this fantastic voice. He was the evil character in every Hanna-Barbera cartoon in the 70s. And he loved that. And one of the reasons he loved it is being tall didn't mean anything. You sit at that table with a microphone with these other creative people, and that's what counts. So the same with writing. Being tall doesn't matter.
Indeed.
Like that. He would see his talent, he would be appreciated for what it was rather than being 6'9".
Your dad did a ton of voice work.
Yes.
Adam
Well, that's
Ant-
where, to be honest, that's where most of his money came from, was voiceover. He got some big national commercials. They paid really well. One of the stories I remember that there was an audition for Schlitz beer, and Dad at the time was quitting smoking, but it made his voice kind of raspy. So I remember going there and I was sitting in the room with him and they were doing it and the voice wasn't perfect. So he said, give me a minute. We went out in the hallway and he's cussing out the world as he's smoking a cigarette to get that smooth. He went back in, he killed it. And all the guys in there, oh, this is the best. This is, I'm sure, but you know, they're not the money. And I believe Paul Frees, another famous voiceover guy, he got the gig. But Dad got Goodyear Tire and a bunch of other really big ones that paid really well.
Losing to Paul Frees is
right, is
understandable.
Exactly.
Okay. One of the greats.
Right. Yeah, Dad's favorite, he said, from the Hanna-Barbera days was Donovan Dawes. He thought he was just from another planet. He was so
the
good.
Voice of boy, what did Dawes do?
Huckleberry Hound.
Huckleberry Hound, yeah.
A bunch of those characters,
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Dad,
yeah.
I remember Dad saying it was the only guy he ever heard who could produce two different notes at the same time coming out of his mouth. I don't even know what that means, but I remember Dad saying that. That he was just very talented. Kind of
an amazing group of voice actors working that particular room at that particular time. Wow, what a group of people. Your dad also did like the Adam Ant Show, Frankenstein Jr., the Fantastic Four, Godzilla.
Yes.
He was the voice of Godzilla.
He was. Well, was it Godzilla or the Frankenstein Jr.? Godzilla, I guess.
Both.
I was older. I never watched any of that. I didn't even know about half of it.
Sure. Yeah. But it's still an incredible body of work, and it was lucrative. And as you said, it was work he could do without feeling self-conscious about.
Right. And I remember the voiceover work he did for The Incredible Hulk. That was a lot of fun. I remember him going to do voiceover grunts. Like, you'd think they might just reuse stuff. They didn't. Every episode he watched and he matched and put the grunts in there. Of course, he did the opening credit voiceover.
David Banner, physician, scientist, searching for a way to tap into the hidden strengths that all humans have.
Through that, of course, he got to know Lou Ferrigno. And Dad was a weightlifter. I am too, and got to meet Lou. And wow, back in the day, and he could lift a town on his own. That was something else. Lou was huge.
When you decided that you weren't going to act and you were going to pursue law, was your dad still around when you made that decision?
No, I was in college when he passed. Actually, that explains part of it. I went to college without a clear idea of what I was going after, as a lot of 18-year-olds. But what we sort of had planned was Dad was going to start in the production area. And I remember working with him, putting those scheduling boards. Do you remember those boards with little strips and you move them around and all that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So he invented his own, and he did a couple of projects, and that's where he wanted to move into, was writing and production and kind of behind the camera. And the idea, just we talked about it all the time, is I'd just join him. We'd be a team. So I went to college because you go to college, but that's what I was going to do. And there aren't a lot of classes in college to prepare you for that. So whatever, I just did my thing. But then during college, he passed. And then I'm like, oh, well, that was sort of my plan. Now what? And I have a good buddy who was teaching me Barbary at the time and said, hey, do you want to? It was kind of path of least resistance, actually becoming a lawyer. It was not a burning passion.
What kind of law did you eventually head into?
Estate planning, wills and trusts, a little real estate. Try to stay out of the courtroom, do more transactions, service the client.
Mm-hmm. Have you been happy in your work?
How many happy lawyers do you know? No, that this line of work is okay. And one of the reasons I like this area is you're dealing with people and their personal feelings and their family relationships and how they can feel more secure about the future. And that was appealing to me, and I like that. But no, it's not acting or music or writing. So, you know.
I see a couple of guitars behind you.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I play guitar, play in a couple of bands. Love doing that.
So really and truly, the creative spark really is in you.
Right. And like I said, though, as a kid, I remember watching Dad by the phone and thought, yeah, creative spark and all, but how do you make money?
Well, if you're going to ask practical questions, you're
I know.
going to ruin it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's the other thing. As long as they stay hobbies, they're still a lot of fun. The moment a hobby becomes your profession, a lot of people go, it changes character, you know. But anyway, that's not the reason that.
So you still, it still brings you joy. It's
I love it. I love music. I love writing. I have one novel in the can. I'm working on number 2. And
what is your novel called?
The Last Straw. Now it's not out. I had a literary agent a while ago. Actually, I had a sit down with Sony. They wanted to go straight to film. Nothing ever happened. And now I think I might just throw it up on Amazon or iTunes or however all that stuff works now. Because back then that was kind of, you know, it was not. Nowadays though, it's mainstream. So I may just go ahead and do that.
What have you got to lose?
Exactly. Yeah.
And holy God, if it suddenly catches fire and you suddenly get a bunch of readers and the next thing you know, you're off on a whole, you're going to prove F. Scott Fitzgerald wrong. There are second acts to American lives, you idiot.
Well, I got these 2, and through a lot of this Son of Lurch stuff, I'm keeping it to, we might compile it into a book about Dad. So there might be that as well.
Your dad certainly, when you consider he never was the star of anything, yet we are talking about him, he is as relevant today as when he did his work.
I think so. Maybe more so. Yeah.
Indeed, I think you could make that argument. In fact, I think you are making that argument, Sean.
With a smile. I like to argue with a smile.
Well, of course, good. You're not in the courtroom, are you?
Right.
I cannot thank you enough for spending this time with us and sharing your memories about your dad. He sounds like he was a wonderful, wonderful dad.
Oh, he was. I miss him every day.
I'm sure.
Wonderful dad, fun person to be around. Yeah. Well, Alan, I want to thank you very much. This was wonderful. You're well prepared, and I loved a lot of the thoughts you spark in my mind as we talk. And you know,
thank you.
Maybe we'll do some more. In August, I'm at a festival in West Virginia called Lurch Fest, the town where Dad grew up.
Yes, I'm aware of Lurch Fest.
And I'll be doing that. Last time I was in makeup. We'll see about this time. That makeup is not fun. So we'll see.
Can't you people just get it? Look, here's a picture.
So we're going to be doing that. And of course, the 60th anniversary is this year, and HorrorCon again. So maybe there'll be occasion to meet up again.
Oh, I expect we will. I will be at HorrorCon LA again this year. I've actually been helping them plan a little bit. a couple of their things.
So you and Alex are good buddies?
Yeah. It's we're like that. It's
excellent.
It's almost weird.
Has he talked to you about Son of Lurch? Because we've had a few telephone calls with him.
We have not talked about that, but I will mention next time we speak that that we have broken creative bread together here.
Right.
And it's a conversation that, hey, you never know what this could breed.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so